Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Philip Vieira. On this day, 108 years ago, Australians and New Zealanders fought side by side, landing in a place far from their homelands, a place that would become known as Anzac Cove. Though the Gallipoli campaign would end with the evacuation in December 1915, those that survived would be joined by more reinforcements to fight for another 3 years until the guns finally fell silent on the 11th of November 1918. On sea, land and air, from a nation of less than 5 million, 62,000 gave their lives in an Australian uniform. A further 155,000 were wounded or imprisoned. From a nation of around 1 million people, around 18,000 New Zealanders were killed and more than 40,000 wounded. Charles Bean wrote about the evacuation from Gallipoli. For the withdrawing Anzacs, Gallipoli had a special meaning. It was not merely that Australians and New Zealanders had been killed and more had been wounded, all were prisoners, but the standards set by the first companies at the first call, by the stretcher bearers, the medical officers, the staffs, the company leaders, the privates, the defaulters on the water barges, the light horse at the neck. This was already part of the tradition, not only of Anzac, but of the Australian and New Zealand peoples. By dawn on December 20th, Anzac had faded into a dim blue line, lost amid other hills on the horizon as the ships took their human freight to Imbros, Lemnos and Egypt. But Anzac stood and still stands for reckless valour in a good cause, for enterprise, resourcefulness, fidelity, comradeship and endurance that will never own defeat. Over more than a century of service, the Australian and New Zealand Defence Forces have continued to serve together across the world in war, on operations and in peacekeeping. Shortly, we will hear the story of Private Victor John Pinkstone, who lost his life during the Gallipoli campaign. On behalf of the Honourable Kim Beazley, Chair of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, the Director, Mr Matt Anderson, and staff, I would like to acknowledge the dignitaries joining us today and to also extend a warm welcome to the families and friends gathered here for this evening's last post ceremony. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier.
Present arms.
If you're able, please stand for the National Anthem of New Zealand, followed by the National Anthem of Australia.
The default party, attention. The default party, present arms.
If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will be now laid at the base of the pool of reflection in the following order. Ms Alicia Payne, representing the Prime Minister of Australia, and Her Excellency the Honourable Dame Annette King, New Zealand High Commissioner to Australia. Mr Andrew Barr, Chief Minister of the Australian Capital Territory. His Excellency Dr Ali Krishan, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Jordan to Australia and Dean of the Diplomatic Corps. Ms Karen Bell, representing the British High Commissioner to Australia, and His Excellency Mr Ufuk Shizair, Ambassador of Turkey to Australia. Mr Jeremy Hanson, representing the Leader of the Federal Opposition, and Ms Nicole Lauder, representing the ACT Leader of the Opposition. General Angus Campbell, Chief of the Defence Force, and Major General Greg Mellick, National President of the Returned and Services League of Australia. Squadron Leader Gary Oakley, National President of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Veterans and Services Association. Mr. David Benalis, National President of the Naval Association of Australia, and Group Captain Carl Schriller, National President of the Air Force Association. Mrs. Robin Mitchell, representing the National President of the Australian War Widows Incorporated, and Ms. Pat McCabe, National President of the Australian Federation of Totally and Permanently Incapacitated Ex-Servicemen and Women. Legatee Mark Lax, representing the Chairman of Legacy Australia, and Miss Diana Marshall, Legacy Youth. The Honourable Kim Beazley, Chair of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, and Mr. Matt Anderson, Director of the Australian War Memorial. And the final reads this evening will now be laid by visitors to the memorial.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Victor John Pinkstone. Vic Pinkstone was born in 1895, the youngest son of Frederick and Emily Pinkstone of Cootamundra, New South Wales. His father was the proprietor of the local newspaper, the Cootamundra Herald. He grew up with 5 brothers and 3 sisters and was educated at the local district school. He went on to work as an orchardist, running a property at Mangrove Mountain with his older brother, Fred. Vic Pinkstone enlisted with his brother Sydney Norman in the Australian Imperial Force shortly after the outbreak of war in August 1914. A 4th brother would enlist later in the war. In the meantime, Vic, Sid and Norm underwent a period of training in Australia, leaving for active service with the 3rd Battalion of the troop ship Euripides in October 1914. The AIF was sent to Egypt, where the men would continue training in the desert. In March, the Pinkstones Brigade was inspected by General Sir Ian Hamilton, who would command the Mediterranean Expeditionary Force during the Gallipoli campaign. Vic Pinkstone wrote, "I don't know yet what his opinion of us was, but sincerely hope he thinks us ready to go and try our luck against the Germans." In fact, the 3rd Battalion was first sent to fight the Ottomans, landing on Gallipoli as part of the 2nd and 3rd waves of the attack on the 25th of April 1915. Pinkstone wrote home to describe how, "We arrived at our landing place very early on Sunday morning and way to the tune of heavy gunfire, so of course, as quick as possible, I was on deck watching the fun. As the first wave of troops landed, Pinkstone could see troop ships and warships, some of the latter engaged in peppering parts of the shoreline. We could see the fire flash from the ships and could see the shells bursting over a piece of land which jutted out into the bay a bit. We were told a number of thrilling stories by the sailors on the torpedo boats who had taken the first ashore." Vic Pinkstone continued his account of the landing. "By the time we got ashore, the firing was well over the 2nd ridge and our brigade was held in reserve. While sitting concealed among the scrub, there we had a good view of the far ridge with enemy shrapnel bursting over from one end to the other. And it seemed to be there could not have been a living creature on this side of that ridge, but our boys were over the top. The 3rd Battalion was shortly called to advance further, and Vic had a close call when a piece of shell landed close to his ear and caused a pebble to fly up and hit his head. He wrote, "At first I thought I was shot, but when I felt it, I found a lump had risen about the size of marble, and that brought me back to life. I give myself up for dead before that." At some point, he was about to volunteer to go forward when he was struck in the thigh by a bullet. He wrote, "I felt a trickle down my leg and a funny sort of pain, so I rolled over and slithered down the gully and made my way along a rough track and eventually reached the dressing station." He added, "I was very much relieved when the Australian Medical Corps chap told me that the bullet had gone right through. The thought of having a bullet probed out did not appeal to me at all." Having been on the peninsula a matter of hours, Vic Pinkstone was evacuated to hospital in Egypt. It took Pinkstone some time to recover from his wound, but by early June he wrote home from his convalescent camp to say, "My leg is healed up okay now, and I can walk now almost without limping, so I guess I'll be getting back to the front before very long." Just over a month later, with his departure for the front confirmed, he wrote, "I'm happy once more that I'm on my way to return to the fight, and I'm in hope of having a longer stay than before." He rejoined his battalion on the Gallipoli Peninsula on the 13th of July, 1915. A little over 3 weeks later, the Allies launched the last major offensive on Gallipoli, which became known as the August Offensive. The 3rd Battalion's major part of the offensive was during the attack at Lone Pine at 5:30 p.m. on the 6th of August 1915. The war diary of the 3rd Battalion records that as soon as we appeared on the parapet, the enemy artillery opened fire with shrapnel and high explosive, but the men rushed straight on and into the enemy's trenches. At night, we hung onto the trenches, taken against vigorous counterattacks and heavy bombing. Vic Pinkstone was with his brother during the initial stages of Lone Pine, and together with a section of men, they held a part of the captured trench. At daylight, Norm left Vic in charge and went back to his post. He had not been there long when word came back that Vic had been wounded. Norm made his way back to his brother, who told him, "Don't worry, Norman, I'm done. Say goodbye to everyone for me. Just give me a drink. I'm in no pain. All feeling has left me." He had been wounded in the back by shrapnel, which had probably left him paralysed. As Norm turned to prepare a bandage, Vic died quietly. Not long after, both Norman and Sid were wounded. In Australia, the death of Vic Pinkstone was remembered in his father's newspapers. A column read, We remember well the day Victor walked into our office with his swag on his back and said goodbye. He said he'd heard the Empire's call out in the orchard. Another columnist wrote, "It is impossible in cold print to express our grief at the death in action of the youngest son of our proprietor in the fighting on the Gallipoli Peninsula. Today, Private Victor Pinkstone is buried in the Lone Pine Cemetery, not far from where he died. His epitaph reads, 'Loyal to God and King,' in Latin. He was 19 years old. His name is listed on the roll of honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Victor John Pinkstone, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
Default party, shoulder, arms.
They shall grow not old, as we that left grow old, and shall not weary them, though the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Default party, present, arms. Default party, shoulder, arms.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Default party, in words, turn. Default party, quick, march.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres, or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.